Hi, everyone, and welcome to this webinar on alcohol and type 1 diabetes. My name is Maha. I'm a dietitian and specialized in type 1 and type 2 diabetes. So today we're going to talk about mechanism of the body in relationship to alcohol. We're going to also look at the alcohol consumption and carbohydrate content. As you know, we can't go over carbohydrates. We're going to look at the impact of alcohol on health and on your blood sugar, and give you some strategies for a safe drinking without having swings in your blood sugar. So we're going to start by explaining the mechanisms of the body in relationship to alcohol. So we're going to start with the liver. So as you know, part of the liver's job is to maintain your blood sugar stable in a fasting state. So during the night and between meals, okay? And that mechanism helps reduce risk of hypoglycemia. But then when you drink alcohol, the liver does digest the alcohol, and it's going to become its priority to do so because the liver considers alcohol like a poison. So it's going to be a priority to metabolize it. By doing so, the liver is not going to produce any sugar to maintain your blood sugar stable. And this is what increases risk of hypoglycemia. On the other hand, the alcohol also decreases the speed of digestion of the meal. So it's going to work like a fatty meal. So when you're taking your insulin, like here, like you're seeing, when you're taking your insulin, well, it's going to go in your body faster than the meal that you're eating. And that is what's going to happen is a higher risk of hypoglycemia after the meal, and then later on, blood sugar going up. What are the factors that could influence how fast we digest the alcohol? So your liver metabolize the alcohol. So when I was doing my readings, I got two different opinions. The first one is saying, regardless of age, sex, and ethnicity, the liver is gonna digest 1 to 1.5 alcohol consumption per hour. But on the other hand, in other literature, they're saying there is factors that we have no control on versus factors we have control on that could impact the rate of the alcohol metabolism. So the factors that we don't have control over are gender. So us women, we metabolize the alcohol slower than men. The older we get, the slower our body is gonna metabolize the alcohol. Certain prescribed and even over-the-counter medication can impact the rate of alcohol metabolism. So, and those are medication that I see frequently in my patients list. It could be Benadryl, it could be pantoprazole, Pantoloc for acid reflux, it could be Vivance. So I've seen many. Talk about it with your pharmacist. It's very important. We also have the weight. The more water we have in our body, the more diluted is the alcohol. So on the other hand, the less water we have, the more concentrated the alcohol is in our body. And finally, if we have certain health problems, so organs that are sick, that are not doing the job properly, like our kidneys or the liver or the stomach, so it will impact the rate of the alcohol metabolism. But the factors that you and I have control over are the number of drinks. So if we go with the first idea of the literature that our liver is gonna digest 1 to 1.5 consumption a day, an hour, not a day, an hour, then if you're drinking 3 drinks per hour, then it's going to take, and then 6 drinks an hour, well, the impact is going to take you 6 hours to digest that, and not 1 hour. The amount of alcohol that you have in a drink, so let's say 5% in a beer, is not the same as 40% of alcohol in whiskey, example. And also, if the alcohol is taken with food or is taken on an empty stomach, well, the digestion of the alcohol is going to be quite different. Now we're going to talk about the servings, and we're going to talk about the carbohydrates. Unfortunately, we cannot go without talking about that. So what are the recommendations? So people living with type 1 diabetes, they have the same recommendations as the general population. So I think you know that information, nothing new under the sun in here. So for men, it's 3 drinks per day for a maximum of 15 per week. And for the women, it's 2 drinks a day for a maximum of 10 per week. Please note that if you're a regular heavy drinking, that could increase the risk of cardiovascular disease and complicates a lot the blood sugar management. And since I get those questions a lot in my practice, you cannot credit your drinks from a day to another. So you cannot say, I didn't drink my 3 drinks yesterday, I'm going to add them to my 3 drinks of today. Or I didn't drink the whole week, so I can enjoy the party, my Christmas party tonight, and drink my 15 drinks all tonight. So we can't do that, because the impact on the blood sugar is linked to the amount of alcohol we're drinking and how fast we're drinking. So what's a drink? So a drink in Canada is defined as containing 10 grams of alcohol. So what's 10 grams of alcohol? So if we look here, if I take a hard liquor like tequila, vodka, whiskey, this is 1.5 ounces, is 1 serving. If I go towards the wine, it's 5 ounces for 1 serving. If I go to the beer, it's 12 ounces for 1 serving. So it's all linked linked to the percentage of alcohol. So see, 5%, we can drink more, 12%, well, we drink less, and 40%, the serving is even less. So we can't say, oh, I'm gonna pour some whiskey in a beer bottle, in a beer cup, because it's not made for the serving, okay? Very important. Now, carbohydrates, it's inevitable that we talk about that. So the alcohol itself doesn't contain carbohydrates, because it's the alcohol is a fermentation of the carbohydrates into alcohol. So the hard alcohol like vodka, whiskey, tequila, gin, those are alcohols that doesn't have any carbohydrates in. Some other alcohols, we have less than 5 grams of carbohydrates, like the red white wine, champagne, sake. So those are alcohols that have less than 5 grams of carbohydrates per drink. So you're going to argue with me saying, yes, but wine does have some carbohydrates. I agree, but it's 15 grams in the whole bottle. So am I going to recommend the whole bottle and then you bolus for that 15 grams? My answer is no. Does alcohol, again, contain carbohydrates? Those are the options where you're going to find carbohydrates in the mixture. So the fireballs, sangrias, Porto, that are sweet wines, Baileys, Ouzo, Kahula, those are alcohol that contains a substantial amount of carbohydrates. So we're gonna see the impact of that carbohydrates on the blood sugar. We, sorry, we also have cocktails. If you do juice and vodka, a mixture of that, it's not the vodka that's gonna count, it's really the orange juice that you're mixing it with. We have more and more drinks mixed with regular iced tea, regular soft drinks like rum and Coke. We have also syrups that you can mix and make some nice colorful cocktails. So those liquors are gonna count because they are sweet. We also have the beers. So we need to pay attention that the beers, when we say no alcohol beer, that means there's no alcohol in it, but that doesn't mean there's no carbohydrates. And if there is less sugar in the beer, that doesn't mean that we don't have alcohol. So it's very important to make that difference. But in a regular beer, it can vary between 15 grams and I've seen up to 16 grams of carbohydrates per bottle. To guide you, to help you, we have this chart from a Better website where you can go have this list. You can record it on your phone, on your take a screenshot and keep it with you to be able to have an idea. So it's not really spot on carb counting, but you will have an idea of how much carbohydrate you could have in the drink. Especially mixed drinks, we can do the parallel with you know, you go to the restaurant, you have spaghetti or a sauce, but you don't know how much carbs there is because it depends on how the chef cooked it, how they made the recipe. So it's the same in the mixture of in the cocktails. You don't know how much the bartender put as liquor or a Coke or juice in your drink. So it gives you somehow just an idea of how much carbs you have. Now, what's the impact of the alcohol on health and on the blood sugar? So we're going to start by saying, and I think this is not news to anybody, the effect of the alcohol on blood sugar is really unpredictable. It's really, you have to know yourself. It's case by case. You have to see how you react to that. But we have hypoglycemia risk and we have hyperglycemia risk because all depend on the amount, the type of alcohol, and also if there is carbohydrates in the alcohol, if we ate it with food, how much carbohydrates we have in the food, is it a meal, a fatty meal, and that's why we could get delayed hyperglycemia. So there is a lot of factors that could impact that reaction of the blood sugar. Please note that you could drink all the coffee you want, you can drink all the water you want, you can shower, you can sleep, but that does not speed up the process of alcohol metabolism. So it's not going to be faster that the alcohol will be out of your system. So as long as the alcohol is in your system, your risk of hypoglycemia is still existing. And some studies, they've shown that hypoglycemia could occur the next day after breakfast. So this is something that we, so here I'm seeing after lunch, but it's after breakfast. So here we can take that into account when we're adjusting the insulin a little bit further. We're going to talk about it. And we talked about the hyperglycemia is really linked to how much carbohydrates you have in your alcohol. Is it mixed to a fatty meal? How is the carb counting? Are you able to carb count the meal? So there's a lot of factors. So we're going to talk about the hypoglycemia because it's, you know, you're enjoying your evening. If the blood sugar goes up, it's okay, but we don't want it to go low because the risk is higher, short-term impact. So the risk of hypoglycemia is increased if you take alcohol with no food. If you dance, if you do physical activity during the day and then you go drink alcohol, then you mix two factors that causes hypoglycemia. And if you had a hypoglycemia during the day, studies have shown that you have a higher risk of having another hypoglycemia during that same day. So imagine you're adding to that some physical activity and some alcohol, then you're increasing even more that risk. So with my readings, they say that the impact of alcohol can vary between 12 up to 24 hours later. And that is linked to how much you're drinking, how fast you're drinking the alcohol, are you eating with it or not, and how your body, this is like a personal threshold, the speed of absorption that is really specific to each one of us. So like I said, the reaction hyperglycemia or hypoglycemia is really related to the type of alcohol. So I've noticed with the beer, so it's not related to studies, it's really what I observed, that with beer, we're seeing hyperglycemia and then the sugar is going down a bit later. On the contrary, with the wine, I've seen hypoglycemia right after the meal or during the night. And I've seen also hypoglycemia after breakfast when we're drinking wine. If you're having ciders, alcopops, and energy mixture, so energy drinks, it's like caffeine, and caffeine, we know that it will increase your blood sugar. That causes hyperglycemia immediately after consumption. And I hope that you realize that the more you mix carbohydrates and alcohol, the harder it makes it to control the blood sugar, because the carbohydrates we deal with them with your insulin, but then with the alcohol, we don't want to give you too much insulin because of the delayed impact of the alcohol that causes hypoglycemia. So this is a balanced decision that you have to take. Those are examples because it will show you really what's going on. So this is a patient that drank the beer in the evening with no eating and no injections, didn't take any correction. And see, he went up all night, and then blood sugar started going down at 3 a.m. So I'm not gonna wake him up and tell him, well, we're gonna take a snack here. It's a possibility, but for sure, I'm not gonna ask him to correct here. Am I gonna ask him to bolus the beers to avoid that 6 hours high? But then what do I do with this low? So those are decisions that we need to make with our patients. This is also one of my patients on injections. She likes to have a glass of wine at dinner in the evening. See, we have the hyperglycemia, but is it linked to carb counting and not enough insulin with the food? Or is it linked because she drank the wine? Look, we don't know, because I'm not gonna tell her just drink wine and let's see how you react to it. This is not out of, not doing that. So, but see, she didn't even correct before she goes to bed, no correction. And then blood sugar, look how it goes down, really, really down in a risk of hypoglycemia. And see, after her breakfast, she did do a hypoglycemia after a glass of wine the day before. This is another of my patients with uncontrolled IQ. See, the pump reacts, gives automatic corrections. So even though I don't say no, I say no corrections, the pump will do that, but at the same time will stop giving insulin when he's going low. So this is a patient that I'm going to recommend that if it rings, keep one Dex4 at a time to bring it up without doing this hyperglycemia reaction. This is another of my patients also, multiple injections. So just to show you, in this lady, when she's drinking wine, well, I'm not having any hypoglycemia. See, it's really, really, really flat. So her risk of hypoglycemia is different than my 73-year-old lady. So as you've seen, again, the same thing, a man, women, I have hypoglycemia at night. This is the same. We have hyperglycemia. We have hyperglycemia here with the meal. With the wine, I have half a bottle of wine. And then the hypo came in the evening and he went up anyways. So do I correct? I don't think so, because look, he was low. This is a patient on a standard pump. I would have recommended temporary basal less to be able to avoid the low. So the short-term risks, you have to keep in mind that the signs of hypoglycemia are the same as the intoxication from alcohol, okay? So very, very important to keep that in mind, because at the end of the day, we wanna keep you away from a severe hypoglycemia that could lead you to confusion and loss of consciousness. So find that person in your family or friends that is not gonna tell you don't drink, but is gonna be there when you need them to be able to enjoy a glass or two of alcohol, okay? If you have to memorize anything or pay attention of anything today, is really this, for your protection. So tell someone that you have type 1 diabetes and what are the risks related to alcohol use. Then tell that person what are your signs of hypoglycemia. Because I have patients that have particular signs of hypoglycemia. So I have a patient that sweats only from here, from his hypoglycemia. So please tell them what are the signs they need to search for. Tell that person how much you drank and teach them how to look at your CGM if you pass out, okay? And to tell them to call the ambulance or 911. In that particular case, you have to tell the ambulance that you drank alcohol and you have type 1 diabetes, because in case of severe hypoglycemia and you took alcohol, the glucagon nasal or injectable will not be as effective. So it will not work. You need glucose infusion in your veins. So very, very important to keep that in mind. Now, the other risks that we relate also to the alcohol consumption, I'm gonna do the parallel with driving. So it's illegal to drive and being with a certain amount of alcohol in the bloodstreams. So it's the same thing, because it affects our judgment and the decision we make, okay? And our reflex are less accurate when we have alcohol in the system. So how we deal and we manage our diabetes is also going to be affected. So we could not correct the hypoglycemia properly, or it could be challenging to treat the hypoglycemia, or you're not checking your blood sugar on a regular basis, or you could carb count less precise, and then when you're calculating your insulin dose, it's less precise, and it could lead to hyperglycemia or hypoglycemia. I also have patients that forgets completely to take the insulin. It could be the nighttime insulin or even the day insulin, the meal insulin, and that could increase your risk of DKA. And also you could be not here, your sound asleep, and you won't hear your CGM, and you won't feel your usual hypo glycemia symptoms, and you might not wake up to treat a hypo. So very important. Now, I want to make if you want to enjoy some alcohol, to make it in a safe way. So what question should I ask myself before I take alcohol? So we ask ourselves, how are my blood sugars lately? Okay, am I having more hypoglycemia than usual? Or do I have health problems that alcohol may aggravate? Maybe. And very, very important, do I have what I need to treat hypoglycemia? Because when we need a treatment, we can't find it. So keep it on you. So those are things that you could do before drinking the alcohol, during and after. So before, please try not to skip meals. So some of my patients are gonna say, oh, I'm gonna eat so much this evening that I'm not gonna eat at all. But then when you have a hypoglycemia during the day, remember, you're a higher risk of having another hypoglycemia that same day. We check our blood sugar regularly. We wear a medical ID, very important, and try to have high carbohydrate meals. During the intake of alcohol, please have some carbohydrates. Avoid drinking without any food. Please don't say to yourself, well, I'm drinking beer and cocktails, so I'm not gonna eat carbs from the meal because I'm getting my carbs from the alcohol, from the cocktail. So don't do that. If your blood sugar is low, it's risky, don't drink. I'm gonna recommend maximum 2 drinks per 3 hours. And then alternate light beers, alternate with low carb, alcohol-free cocktails. So to avoid hyperglycemia and then hypoglycemia, we drink a lot of water because alcohol dehydrates and hyperglycemia dehydrates. So we don't want you to go in DKA. It's very important to hydrate yourself. Keep checking your CGM. I know now we're checking less and less our blood sugar. So keep checking your CGM. And if it's going low, keep in mind, have some snacks and avoid binge drinking, please. But now you know why. Afterwards, you enjoyed your evening, you had a nice party, set your low alert on a higher threshold. So it keeps ringing, so it wakes you up if you're not able to wake up. Having some snacks without insulin could be an option. It depends on what you're taking. Look, you've seen how high it could go from my examples. Do I really need to make it higher? So maybe the snack could be depending on your blood sugar before you go to bed. Set alarms to wake up in the night and early morning. If you're able to wake up on the CGM low alert, you don't need to wake up regularly, but you have to make sure that you wake up on the alarm. Avoid sleeping in the morning after a drunken night out, just because we want to avoid that going low. And have your breakfast as usual, please, with your insulin, and we'll see if we change that insulin later. In the next slide. Now, do I need to adjust my insulin? Honestly, it's really case by case. There's no really study to adjust the insulin. Whatever we're going to discuss, what I'm going to discuss with you today is it's a start point based on my understanding of the diabetes and on whatever I tried with my patients. But it's a starting point for you, and you can take it and try to adapt it to yourself. Don't hesitate to use alerts and alarms on your CGM because you need to react on time. And unfortunately, we can't go without documenting the strategies you use, because if it works, you need to repeat it. If it doesn't work, well, you need to tweak it for the next time. And it depends also on the alcohol. So the reaction for the beer is not the same as drinking wine. It's not the same as drinking cocktails or drinking hard liquor. So you might need strategies for each type of alcohol. It's exactly like physical activity. You have strategies if you're skiing versus you're running versus you're swimming. So you have strategies depending on the activity. So we're gonna start for those who are on multiple injections. So if you're having beer, I'm gonna recommend decreasing your NPH, Lantus or Basaglar, if you're still on those, by 20% the same evening. If you're taking Tresiba, we don't touch the dose because the impact is not gonna be the same day. It's a day or two later, it's too late. Do we take a snack? Maybe we're gonna see on what threshold of blood sugar we're gonna take the snack. So if we are at 5, 6, 7, maybe we're taking a snack to bring it up and then the alcohol brings it down, maybe. So we're gonna have to see. The first beer is free, so no insulin for that, but then you're gonna have to take insulin for the rest of the beers. But again, this is a start point. We need to see, maybe for you, it's the first beer and the last beer that you don't bolus. Maybe you bolus all beers and the 3 last ones you don't bolus them. So we need to see what applies to you. Correction at bedtime. So if you're high, you're at 16, 17 at bedtime, do we correct? I don't know. It depends on, I need to see how you're reacting. Do we correct with half a dose? I don't know. We're gonna have to see how also you react with your blood sugar. And some literature is saying, do adjust the ratio for less insulin on the meal before the alcohol. Maybe it's an option. I've never used it much, but it could be an option. Now, for the wine and the strong liquor, no correction at bedtime for now, okay? We're gonna decrease the NPH, the Lantus, and the Basaglar by 20%, but it could be 30%, it could be 40%. You're gonna have to see how your body reacts. And with the decreasing of the insulin, do we really need to take a snack or not? We have to see. With the Tresiba, we don't change the dose. It's the same thing as with the beer, but do we say on a threshold of blood sugar, do we take a snack to avoid hypoglycemia during the night? That could be an option. And I'm gonna recommend adjusting the ratio for less insulin on the breakfast the next day, because to avoid the dipping in the blood sugar that the next day. So, but maybe it's not your case. Maybe you don't see that when you're drinking wine or strong liquor. So go case by case. Now, if you're using a standard pump, so not the automatic system, we might need to, for the beer and also for wine and liquor, we might need to adjust the ratio on the meal time. For the beer, sweet cider, alcopops, we're gonna have to take insulin to cover half the carbs you're eating, you're having from the 2 first bottles. Then you don't take any bolus. And if you're higher in the evening, we're gonna have to take a correction dose, but half that dose, not the full dose. For the wine, we don't bolus for the carbohydrates, okay? If it's a sweet wine, it's different, but a regular wine, dry wine, we don't bolus for the carbs. If we need to take a correction, here again, we take half the correction before you go to bed. And we're gonna put a temporary basal minus 20% overnight, and we're gonna increase it to 50% if we're doing any physical activity. The bedtime snack could be an option, but remember, we reduced temporary basal, we reduced it. So do we need to double act on it? Maybe we need it, we have to see. And the next day for breakfast, we might need to reduce your carb ratio for that day specifically. For the strong liquor, it's the same as the wine. So I'm going to use the same strategies. And keep in mind that we can go up to 80% of reduction of the basal from starting the moment you go out till the next day at noon. Donc it's not only at breakfast. We're gonna extend it till lunch. For the automated pumps, look, no studies, experience. I'm gonna go depending on how the algorithm is working. So for the beer, do we bolus them all? Because if we don't bolus them, we're gonna get automatic correction. Do we only rely on the automatic correction to take care of it, especially that the automatic correction on the tandem is gonna give 2/3 of the correction? Do we put the exercise mode or the temporary target on the Medtronic so we get less basal if the blood sugar goes up? But on the tandem, you're gonna still have the automatic bolus, the automatic correction. On the new 780, you might get, you know, the corrections unless you put the temporary target. So we're gonna have to see, okay? The wine and the strong liquor, it's the same. Do we put the exercise mode and then we get those automatic corrections? Do we we're not bolusing for the wine, okay? We're not bolusing for the strong liquor, but are we putting a temporary target throughout the night, or do we put it as a regular automatic and then we let the pump stop giving basal if it gets to a certain blood sugar? Look, I don't know, but the one thing that is sure, we can't have free, I'm gonna talk about the tandem, we can't have free snacks, because the free snacks without any risk of hypoglycemia is gonna produce more insulin, so more correction, more basal. So we're gonna end up with more insulin than what we wanted initially. On the Medtronic, the basal will increase to cover up, but it will not increase to the point to cover up all the carbs. Is it protective? It could work, but on the 780, it's gonna be risky because you're gonna get automatic corrections with the full amount of correction. So maybe it's not a good option. So we're gonna have to see and try it out. We're here to help you. We're here to find strategies with you. So the more you document stuff, the easiest it's gonna get us to see, is it the hyper or the hypo? Is it linked to the alcohol, or is it linked of the carbohydrate counting, the insulin dose that you took? Is it because you had a physical activity, or is it the temp basal? Is it enough? What you put, the reduction. So it helps us, the more information we get, the better we can help you. At the end, I hope you're equipped to enjoy a drink or two during the holidays without having unpleasant surprises. Please prepare your game plan before you drink. Don't hesitate to discuss it with us. We're here for that. And I hope you enjoy the family and have a safe and happy holiday season. Thank you.